Good afternoon, everyone. Prior to the 6.4 earthquake in Taiwan, there had been a spate of quakes, dozens and dozens, going over 100 in the days prior to. Buildings shaken off their foundations, bridges impassable, roads buckling, and the aftershocks continue in Hualien area. Just days after an NCU professor postulated that Taiwan's entering a 100-year earthquake cycle based on prior quakes in 1815, 1920. Looking back at the sunspot cycle circled in red, we're going to repeat the Dalton minimum matchup. The solar forecast going out, decreased activity, which means increased seismic activity. Overlaying Landscheid's work, the next quakes to hit Taiwan at the 8.0 range should be 2020. And while you're watching the video, please remember to subscribe to Adapt 2030 and click that bell so you can get the latest updates. This is an open response to the article put out by NCU professor Chyi postulating a 100-year earthquake cycle with an 8.0 high probability occurring in 2025. Professor, I wish you would look at this information. I do believe it's going to occur in 2020. This is my own opinion. I'm presenting my research to you so we can collectively pinpoint when this is going to happen to save lives. Now, prior to the 6.4 earthquake in Taiwan, for the last 5 days, there have been over 100 earthquakes. Some of the larger ones, even at the 6.2 magnitude, all occurring in the exact same location. Just days prior to this largest quake, Professor Chyi puts out this article, Hualien quakes sign that Taiwan has entered a 100-year earthquake cycle. And leading up to the larger quake, there were a multitude of 3s, 4s, 5s, and even 1/6. When I first started researching this article before the quake, the Taiwan earthquake forecast and geological survey, the pages were full. They were just rotating so quickly. USGS even showed 4.6, 4.8, 4.9 during the week, and then the 6.4 struck in the exact same area. Shallow quake at just 10 kilometers or 6 miles under the surface. Buildings shaken off their foundations. There's a total of 6 buildings. This is just the main one that you've seen in the news. There are 5 others. Roads have been buckled. Bridges are impassable. There were landslides. And this is what's making the news headlines globally. A view here for you of Taiwan and the magnitude felt across the island. And being in Taipei City during that quake, where in the blue it says magnitude 2, I assure you it was not. Our windows were shaking and rattling. The entire event lasted about 45 seconds, but it was one of the strongest quakes I've felt living here for years. That was not a 2 registered in Taipei. That was definitely in the 4 range. Even today, aftershock after aftershock in the 3 to 4 range. And this all pegs right back to that same article talking about Hualien quakes entering a 100-year earthquake cycle. It's talking about the Philippine Sea Plate and the Eurasian Plate meeting. And Hualien, in this exact same location, 1815 and 1920, had massive quakes. So since we're going into a grand solar minimum, we know our magnetosphere is affected. The effects from our sun electromagnetically are going to cause more tectonic activity on this planet. I've circled in black the 2 earthquake events in time on the solar cycle. 1815, that was leading up to the year without a summer with the Tambora eruption, right in the center of the Dalton minimum. 1921 at the bottom of 11-year solar cycle as well. When we look out with the forecast, and Dr. Abutsmatov Pulkovo Observatory's solar forecast, we are definitely going back into the exact same solar activity state as was experienced in 1815. And the overlay of solar cycle 24 compared to solar cycle 5. Even the butterfly diagrams with the daily sunspot area coverage by hemisphere shows that we're back into the 1880s already, and it's going to drop from there. There's so much information coming out now about the grand solar minimum we are entering, and we just need to look back in history. And Professor, thank you for putting together information about the earthquakes. Zarkova, Popov, Zarkov, and Shepard's work about the double dynamo magnetic effects on the sun clearly show that we're also going to drop down in activity state. And when this happens, a correlation of 100% of increased volcanism and tectonic activity. This is NCU Professor Chyi forecasting at least an 8.0 coming in 2025. And Professor, I'm just presenting the research. I really believe this is going to happen earlier than 2025. So I've overlaid what I had showed that graphic before, circled with the sunspot activity where the two quakes occurred. Now let's put it into Theodore Landscheidt's work with a different periodicity on top of that. The black arrows are indeed where the quakes struck. And you can see again, that's the bottom of the trough when we are heading back into that 1815 repeat again. The place it lines up on this chart is 2020, not 2025. That would be at the higher peak on the cycle. These quakes that you referenced in your article come at the low troughs on Theodore Landscheidt's work. When we look at the angular momentum for the past and future solar activity, that orange on the right is where we're going to in the future. On the left is the past. 1802, 1813, and then we skip forward to where it says 2012, 2023, repeating cycle. So perhaps this is a multi-century quake that is upon us. The Earth spoke to us yesterday. Not only are the snowstorms blanketing parts of Taiwan over the last week, but now we have a quake again on this magnitude matching up with these multi-century cycles, grand solar minimum effects with the weather. Even the IPCC and the Met Office forecast show incredibly low solar activity, matching up exactly with the early 1800s. So as we move forward into the eddy minimum, much larger quakes are expected. The New Madrid fault zone in the United States went off during this time, during that same exact period. Here in Taiwan, massive quakes. The year without a summer in Indonesia, and we are repeating the exact same solar output. There's definitely a correlation here. Professor, I would like to talk to you, try to compare some research. I think this information will be useful for all of us moving forward to try to at least predict where some of these quakes are going to be based on past cycles. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the video. How prepared are you in the event of an earthquake?